So just in very brief about this book, most of my writing was for teenagers, and then I did a book that was sort of a bit Buddhisty and a bit about writing called Still Life with Teapot, about Zen, memoir and creativity. And then I began a new book, which was, my idea was to have essays that began with the word on grief, on toast, on friendship, on Friday. And then someone very beloved to me died in New Zealand, and I went back for that. And it wasn't as though I was struck with grief that I couldn't write, but the book sort of went off the boil a bit. But I showed it to my editor at Fremantle Press, and she and another woman said, look, there's a book here, but what we think it needs now is that, she was sort of encouraging me, which I really did need, into the Buddhist personal growth. What do people need to hear right now? It was before COVID, but anyway, so to be honest, I did not have a year of loving kindness to myself in January, I worked with anxiety, and in February, I worked with anger, and in March, I worked with some other thing. I just basically used my own experiences of trying to have loving kindness for myself and put it into that format. So all the things that I put in the chapters did happen to me, but it was sort of a bit of a device, a frame, if you like, to put it like that. So that's how I came to write the book. And then it's done really well for me because COVID came along, and I think more than ever people were, excuse me, interested in what is loving kindness. So as I say in the beginning of the book, it wasn't modelled in my home. Drinking was modelled, intellectual discussion was modelled, feeding people was modelled, and getting angry and somewhat violent was modelled by my wonderful, talented alcoholic parents. So even though I came to Dharma about 40 years ago and I did what you're supposed to do, which is, loving kindness to all beings, it wasn't really something I was good at. And then, without going into it too much, about 12 years ago, I had a really messy patch in my life, and I've had to sort of, even though I'd had the Dharma for so many years and lived at Wat Buddha Dharma, you can still fall over a cliff. So I really did begin then to bring out the toolbox of what actually helps. So sitting on your pillow helps, listening to Dharma talks, these are the things that help me. Going for a walk helps, but loving kindness actually became, what is this and what does it mean to me? And so it's actually really simple. So for me, and you can write this down if you want, you don't have to, but the two questions you could ask yourself on a daily basis would be, what's going on? What's going on? What am I aware of? What can I see, hear, taste, touch, and smell? Because often we're not even present to that. You might think, what's going on? Okay, there's bird song, but what's going on is I'm a bit anxious and thinking a lot. And there's no judgment. You just go, what's going on? I'm hungry. I'm tired. I'm busy. I can hear something. Oh, I can smell something. So what's going on? And then the next question is that okay by me? And that's the loving kindness part, because for myself, I had spent so long in my life going, well, I kind of know what's going on, but it's not really okay by me because I don't want to have a sore knee. And I'm very anxious about why this person said that to me, and a lot of sort of trouble in my mind. And, thinking it should be otherwise, like I'm trying to meditate and I'm restless. My mind is a very busy mind. Oh, that's not okay by me. So the idea that first, what is going on, very basically with the five senses. And secondly, can you put your arms around that? Can you be generous and loving and kind about that? So I've got pages of notes here. So I'm just going to read you a few things that came to me when I was thinking about this talk. And so just to continue, loving kindness for me has been a very simple thing. It's also a dance. It's not like you go, okay, tick, got loving kindness sorted. Now I'll move on to compassion. Right, tick, got that sorted. Don't have to worry about that ever. No, for some of us, probably all of us, this is until you die. How is this? Because it goes on. A new thing happens, a new love affair falls down, or a relative dies, or a dog passes away, or whatever the thing is. Things will keep arising. The Buddha told us about that. Dukkha will occur. And here we are in our bodies, in our lives, trying to make the best of it. So for me, it's sort of a dance. Like a silly example is on any particular day, loving kindness to yourself might be sitting down with some chocolate and a silly TV show. That might be just what's going to make you feel good. We'll do that. But on another day, stuffing a whole lot of chocolate into your mouth and watching endless rubbish is not the answer. So you can't say, oh, well, chocolate and TV is a good thing and something else is a bad thing. Hold on, just dropped my thing. Okay, so I'll just read you a few of these lovely things that came my way. This was from a book called When I Loved Myself Enough. When I loved myself enough, I quit exhausting myself by trying so hard. When I loved myself enough, I stopped fearing empty time and quit making plans. Now I do whatever feels right and am in step with my own rhythms. Delicious. When I loved myself enough, I quit trying to be a savior for others. When I loved myself enough, I began listening to the wisdom of my body. It speaks so clearly through its fatigue, sensitivities, aversions, and hungers. So I find that really very inspiring. Another thing about loving kindness is, and I'm talking to the converted here, I know that you guys all know all this, to be happy about our lives, to be grateful, to see the good rather than the problems. That is a loving kindness maneuver, because some of us are quite Eeyore and we're quick to grasp to see the dukkha, to see the suffering, to be quite unkind to ourselves. Oh, you shouldn't be like this and that shouldn't have happened and I wish it wasn't like this. Well, you can tilt your brain in a better direction, a happier direction, a kinder direction. Begin every day by chanting a list of your blessings. This is something else. Feel free to jot down, another helpful thingamy. What are your blessings? And you'll find that even on the horriblest, most challenging of days, there will be blessings. You just go, oh, that, this happened to me one day. There were these kind of bogans sitting on a step drinking and smoking and drinking, but they gave me the most beautiful greeting and it really lifted my spirits. Like we were all one. They weren't bogan and I wasn't hurrying to office works. We were just like people having a happy moment together. So the way Thich Nhat Hanh puts it is to accept ourselves as we actually are. And we can encourage that. May I meet this moment fully. May I meet this moment as a friend. And for another thing that I'm just throwing it all at the wall here, and some of it may stick and some of it may not, but it's quite interesting to do things in your head. And then it's also sometimes quite good to do things on paper. And I know that sounds cheesy, but often if you go, okay, I'm going to draw a mind map and I'm going to just play with coloured pens and my own journey. What's working in my life? What's not working in my life? What's on my to-do list? What's on my I want to list? Because we've all got a to-do list, but then are you doing anything on your want to list? So that's it. And you can just make it a colourful exploration. And one of the ways that I've worked with it is you can put it into body, head, and heart. So you can say to yourself, well, how am I doing loving kindness to my body? Am I keeping up my sitting practice? Am I eating properly? Am I going for walks? Am I dancing? Am I doing yoga, tai chi, cycling, gardening, swimming, whatever it is for you that brings you into your body? Would it be really good if I splashed out and had a massage? Would it be really good if I said to someone, the right someone, obviously, could we have a hug? Should we rub each other's feet? So that's body, the area of your body. How are you looking after your body? And sometimes it's just like lie down and say some happy things to yourself. And then we could have the next area would be head. Is my thinking peaceful or agitated? Is it helpful or unhelpful? And this for me, I'm just about to go on a retreat with Shyla Catherine, and the book that she's just written is called The 5 Distractions, and it comes from a Buddhist sutra, and there's 5 different ways we can look at our own thinking And it's really interesting to me because it's not that anyone copied anyone, but it's almost exactly the same as cognitive behavioral therapy. If you're depressed or anxious, where you actually take a look, what are my thoughts and are they helpful? And if you're interested, just go to The 5 Distractions by Shyla Catherine and you can read the suitors, because it's important to do that. If you go, okay, is this thinking helpful to me? No. Is it kind to me? No. Is it going to get me anywhere good? Not in the least little bit. And one of the fairly graphic things that the Buddha apparently says, that if you come up with the answer that it's not doing you any good, the metaphor he used was, imagine a dead sheep around your neck. Like, what would you do? You're not going to carry the corpse of a dead animal around your neck. So why would you carry around unhelpful, anxiety-based, worst-case scenario, cruel to yourself type thinking? So we've got body, so we've got head, and then this heart. And this one's a little bit more esoteric in a way, and it's often, I think, for me, it's like, oh yeah, heart, like care of the soul, and just listen. I don't know what that means to you, but you could explore that. But for me, I thought, what actually feels right to me at the present, not what I think could be good, but what feels right, what organically might feel right. And I'm like that with ringing people, especially if it's a tricky phone call. You go, does this feel right? Nah, doesn't feel right. It's not quite the time. Or trying to make a decision. Does this feel right? No, I haven't got full information. I'm just confused. And I think rather than trying to figure it all out with the head, it's more of a heart thing. It's more of a, oh, okay, what's that about for me? And just resting with that. And also trusting the intuition. And I think for me in the heart area, or I might have put it in the wrong category, but is encouraging phrases. So Christian Neff has got some wonderful phrases, and I've been using them when I lie down in the afternoon. I call it loving kindness meditation. I don't know what you'd call it, and again, you can go online and go Christian Neff self-compassion meditation, where you go, may I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be kind to myself, may I accept myself as I am. And then there's another round, may I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be kind to myself, may I accept my life as it is. And those phrases might not mean anything to you, but they really worked for me. And it might be a very simple phrase. You just go, all is well, or trust the moment, or just some phrases. So yeah, to me, that goes into the heart place. So I think maybe I might just leave it there, because Helen had some really good questions, and then I could say more, but that's probably a start. And Helen, after Helen's questions, you yourselves might like to ask me something.
Yeah, thanks, Brigid. I was just going to say, please, if you've got questions, put your hand up. That's probably simplest. Or if you want to write them, put them in the chat room and I can read them. Brigid, what do you say to those who say all this loving kindness to yourself is a bit self-indulgent? What are you doing?
All right. Well, no one's actually ever said that to me.
Well, I'm suggesting
it. Now that you have, I would say bunkum. Is that swearing? My granddaughter charges me $1 every time I swear, so I'm hoping that bunkum isn't swearing.
I think that's okay.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
I think Etta would pass that. It just makes no logical sense to me at all. And in fact, I'm going to read a little piece out of the book at some stage, but it really answers that, because I really believe, and the Buddha said this too, that you can't give from an empty cup. You can't spread something around the universe if you don't have it for you. And those of us who've tried to do that and look after everyone else and rush around being helpful and kind, it's very sticky and it doesn't usually go well. And that's what, you can get burnout and you can feel bitter and you can feel martyred and you can just really annoy people, actually, if you always thinking, I'll give out to the universe. But if in your own heart, you're not comfortable with being you and just at some level at ease in your own life and in your own spirit and in your own soul or being. I just firmly believe that you won't have much to spread. And let's face it, the world needs our loving kindness now more than ever. Like all the Buddhist teachers are saying this, in this time of climate change and so many troubles in the world. Like, to me, this is my practice. What could I give? What can I offer? And maybe all I can offer is being kind to my neighbour and looking after my grandchildren and being a good friend. Or maybe I can take to the streets and protest and sign things and give money to nuns. And, you know, there are many, many small things we can do, and it will probably never feel enough. But I just totally believe that to sit quietly with a peaceful heart is a greatly beneficial offering to the universe. I believe that.
Richard, my second question is a little bit similar, but do you think Westerners have a particular problem with generating loving kindness? It seems to come more, my observation, it comes more easily to the Asian cultures.
Yeah, this could well be true, and we've all probably heard the story of the Dalai Lama and the conference just going, what are you talking about? Low self-esteem and self-hatred. I don't understand the question. Yeah, so I think as a generalization, I mean, this is like made up out of my own brain. I believe that Westerners, and I'm talking about us, we're so privileged that we have the luxury of being neurotic. We have everything that opens and shuts. We have food, we have clothes, we have too much stuff, we have, you know, information coming at us all the time. And what that's done is basically nothing that, not necessarily a particularly good place to be when you have everything, when you believe that satisfying your desires will bring you happiness, and yet it doesn't. And so a lot of people are just like, well, I'll drink more, I'll watch more TV, I'll buy more, I'll going in completely the wrong direction looking for happiness. So, I mean, I'm not Indian or Vietnamese or Balinese, so I can't say, but I just do know that when I've been, for example, in Bali in India, many, many people who do not have very much physically, materially, seem to have a lighter step.
Okay, and my third question, and then I'll open it up, was you said, and you spent many years at Wat Buddha sort of doing the practice, but if I understood you right, you said you needed more, you needed to really, really get into something helpful. Yeah,
that's really true. Like different times in your life, different teachers, different practices, different life events. And so, as I mentioned, having had a fairly challenging period in my life, I had to really recalibrate, like what might be missing here. And without asking for the pity vote, I was what's the word? How can I put it nicely? I was a mass of self-hatred underneath all the, I'm a good Buddhist and I lived at Wat Buddha Dharma and I'm the Tenzo for the Zen group. And, you know, like that can look very shiny on the surface, but the actual little person inside was fairly broken. And so loving kindness then had to come to the aid. You know, it's like, it's not just, you know, I was one of those people like Sharon Salzberg. Some of you may well have heard this story, but she said that when she was doing the loving kindness practice, I think on a retreat, and it was just dry. You know, she was doing it, saying the phrases, dry and dry and dry. And she also had a very traumatic childhood with a lot of like really difficult things in it. And then just as she had to go somewhere, as I believe she had to leave the retreat, and she was sort of hurrying to pack, and she smashed a cup by mistake, and she heard herself say, you're a klutz, but I love you. Like something had gone in that she wasn't able to just go, you're a klutz and you're an idiot and you shouldn't have been hurrying. And then there was some little part of it that went, but I love you. And I've always found that quite encouraging. So yeah, even though I was good at, like, funnily enough, when I lived at Wat Buddha Dharma, Prakanti Pala gave us all a Dharma name, and my Dharma name was Metta. And I thought this was very wonderful because, you know, Metta. And then he said to me, because you are very angry. Okay, so that was interesting. So he was, let's face it, he was offering me could this be your practice? So it took me, to my 50s to really look at, what is loving kindness to me and how would that operate? And I mean, I just thought today, it's very simple. Like, this is just a totally simple example, but today I was a little nervous about this, even though I wanted to do it. When you go, well, they're all going to turn up and I hope I can remember my own name and a few things that the Buddha said. And I thought, well, what would you like afterwards? And I thought, well, I'm going to put the books and magazines I feel like reading on my bed. I'm going to make sure I've got a nice lunch and then a few things that I feel like doing. And that's very simple, but how often do we rush on to the next thing we're supposed to do? And I have to ring so-and-so. And like a friend and I have a practice called do less. And on any day when you've got a list, you can usually knock a couple of things off it when you go, well, I could go and do one more errand. And you go, but actually, I'm really tired. Why don't you do that one another day? Like, it's so simple, really. But otherwise, you can just be sort of on automatic pilot and not really knowing what is loving kindness. What does this really mean to me in my life? And yeah, so...
Scylla's actually come in and sort of contradicted me in a way. And she says, I don't really believe that Westerners are any more anxious, etc., than others around the world. So there you go.
But I don't think you actually said anxious, though, because anxiety is very different to self-hatred or low self-esteem. So I think, yeah, we can't say, who can say, but they are actually different things. And the thing that the Dharma teachers were asking the Dalai Lama, what do we do for all these students who come to us basically saying, I don't like myself, I'm not going well in my practice, and their main narrative is me no good. And this is a thing that a Dharma teacher has to look at. Like, if the Buddha told us the three things, unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and no self, and then you have student after student after student who have a very strong narrative of self, and it's a very unhappy one. They don't like who they are, and they don't like what's happening, and they don't feel good about it. Something in there needs untangling. So, yeah, that's, I think, what we were talking about rather than anxiety. Yeah.
And Brigid, it seems to me that what you're doing is a lot of positive self-talk. You're really, boosting yourself.
Yeah.
Like your own, what they say these days, your own personal trainer, your personal guide.
True.
Yeah.
This is true. But however, there was just, funnily enough, when I lived at the Wat, there was a little girl who was 9 years old wandering around in the bush. She was the daughter of John and Sheila Hale, and her name was Wyan, and she's now like a full grown up, probably 40, I don't know. And she is a counsellor, and she's in Tasmania, and she sometimes puts things on Facebook from her counselling. And she just said, this was something that she put on this week. I find going for a walk, a cold swim, or dancing to a song can energize me. But sometimes I just have to be kind and let myself be with what is. So I'm not really like, oh, you have to be happy all the time and you have to say cheerful stuff and then you'll be cheerful and this is a quick fix to your suffering. But sometimes the kindest thing you can do is just be sad, is just be grief-stricken, is just be angry, is just be confused and let that be. Would that be okay? Would that be okay with you, that right now this is how it is for you? And my son saw something fantastic written on a van recently, probably a hippie van. It said, no feeling is final. Isn't that good? No feeling is final. And so could you just go, this is okay. It's not ideal. I wish I wasn't like really in this, these feelings are not the ones I would have called on, and yet here they are, and they won't last forever, and they're not really the story of me, and would that be okay? And that, everything passes, they'll be gone. Tomorrow you'll be having some other thing.
And anyone else got some other questions or thoughts? If not, I can get I'll ask you another question from my own practice. When I started practicing and doing loving kindness, I'm thinking particularly of another teacher at the Wat, Ayakima, used to teach a lot on loving kindness. And I used to think, you know, if you got it going and you've got your loving kindness going, and you could zap this person and zap that person and the other person with loving kindness. It doesn't really work like that, does it? Or does it?
No, not really. And the most difficult people, sometimes for me, I just widen the circle as much as I can because the Buddha talked about causes and conditions, like what has led that person to there. And that can sometimes, for me, just doesn't mean I adore them and feel radiant bliss towards them, but there can be some more understanding. I think I'll just read this little bit from the book that I was going to read you. Because,
okay.
Is that good? And then we'll see if any more questions.
Yeah, we've got another question.
Okay. Well, shall I read this and then take the next question? Might as well. This is just it's funny, a writer should never say this, but this is the part of the book that I really like the best. So, and it's at the end of the 12 months of loving kindness. Starting from a place of self-acceptance, moving outwards into a world that badly needs love and good energy, extending the hand of truth, integrity, and kindness to others is a deep form of self-compassion. Although we do not always see our place in the great mystery, we are not separate. We are our mother's recipes, our neighbour's sorrow, our friends' memories, our dog's friskiness. We are the last cigarette we ever smoked, the first heart we ever broke, the fireworks, the folly, the shoe abandoned at the beach. All of this connected in ways we will never fully understand. But here we are in this beautiful broken world with our tender, aching hearts, a part of something vast and magnificent. To trust life as it is and savour one's part in it, what could be lovelier or kinder than that? It has been quite a year. The things I have lived, I share with you. Let us give the Buddha the last word, which always seems a wise thing to do. You can search the tenfold universe and not find a single person more worthy of loving kindness than yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we've got a question or a statement from Luna. When the survival of those of us who are privileged is threatened, e.g. these natural disasters like bushfire, and Brigid and I were just talking about the disasters in New Zealand, compassion and generosity often seem to arise spontaneously, and we seem to value each other more.
I totally agree. My friend Luna is very wise, I have to say. And another person who lived at Wat Buddha Dharma and did the 3-month retreat at IMS. So she has a lot of wisdom, and it's really nice to have a friend who, like most people, if you said, I just want to send you this sutta or listen to this Dharma talk, like it's good to have. I've got a few other ones here. I can see a few of my other dear friends who, you know, special Dharma sisters are very valuable, very valuable.
Okay, well, I might sort of pick on a few people. Venerable Jue is with us from the temple in Wollongong. Venerable Jue, you always have some wisdom and profound things to say. Would you like to say anything on loving kindness? Oh, maybe she's not there. No?
Not working.
Maybe not there.
Hello, I'm here. Hi.
Venerable Jue.
I am sorry, my camera is not working, and I'm on my phone at the moment. But I want to say thank you very much to Brigid for this wonderful reminder of being kind to ourselves. I live in a community of, I think, a lot of nuns, and at the moment we are grieving the loss of our venerable master Xing Yun at the age of 97. He has just left us. But I must say that he has taught us so much about loving kindness, and I'm very grateful to the community, to him for giving us this community. And I urge everyone to consider really joining some community. I mean, the Sakyadhita Australia is a community, but communities are what will also help us and reinforce sometimes when we are down and we aren't able to find the power and the strength to pick ourselves up. That's when the community helps. To have also a teacher, whether alive or departed, his writings and teachings to be our shining examples, I feel are also so wonderful. And so I want to thank you, Brigid, for leaving behind your wise words. I think that's also such a gift. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Venerable Xu-Wei. And it's a bit off topic, but I'd also like to say that Brigid has written very briefly on death after, I think, the death of a friend and the mystery of death and what happens. And I found that a couple of my friends have lost parents in the last week, and I found it very helpful both to read and when I'm talking to them. So I'd recommend that. A very small chapter in the book.
Yeah, and thanks for that. That was actually my niece, and she was the most...
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. She was the most amazing person, and she was like my soulmate in the family because of all the people. She was like the spiritual one, and it was I mean, it's very sad to have a 5-year brain cancer journey, and she had a son and all of that. But as well, her passing was the most amazing thing. It was as it had to be, obviously, but it was joyous in its own funny way. And I tell the story because it's so worth sharing. She was obviously at the end, and so I'd flown in from Australia. This was in Auckland. Her half-brother had come from New York, her best friend from Melbourne, and people were coming to the house, and it was sort of like a bit of a house party in a way. And she lost speech, but she had a whiteboard. And it was a very strange thing because she was sort of like someone would bring a curry and she'd write on the whiteboard, more palak paneer in the fridge. And then she'd say, the chase is meant to be on. And people would lift her onto the couch. And then it was just a few days. And then at the very end, her mother, my sister, and this is a thing that commonly happens for dying people, the person's basically saying, it's okay to go. Like, it's nearly your time to go, and we love you and we don't want to lose you, but it's like encouraging her that she could let go of the body now and, relax into her dying. And sorry, this cracks me up and also just about brings me to tears. She wrote on the whiteboard, tried to die, too many visitors. What a woman. And then just, maybe the next day she was lying on the bed and her stepson was in there and off she went. But it was so amber, tried to die, too many visitors. Yeah. A good example of, because there's only two things we really know, and well, one's that we're going to die and the other one is we don't know when. And this is something, talking about Prakanti Palo, who was my first Dharma teacher. He was so good because he'd been a Thai forest monk, and he had all the basics of Buddhism, like really were told to us living there at Wat Buddha Dharma. And you meant to say this every day. Most of you will have heard this, but you meant to say, I am of the nature to die. I am not exempt from this. I am of the nature to grow old. I am not exempt from this. I am of the nature to grow ill. I am not exempt from this. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, of this I shall be the heir. And that sort of helps a bit with the death and dying, because of course, two things are happening. We love someone. We are attached to them. We want them to be around, and they have gone, and we will feel grief. And to think that, oh, well, you're Buddhist, you're not meant to feel anything. Of course you will feel grief, but also at some deep level, we understand that this is what happens. And the more you love someone, the harder it will be. So this is the truth of the matter. And so I think death is a really important topic, especially for those of us who are no longer 30 and who are losing friends, and just about everyone you know is either about to have an eye operation or a hip operation, or they just lost a family member. It's like, it's easier to ignore when you're 30, unless you're Amber, but becomes more and more of a practice. How can we have loving kindness around this and around our own anxiety about it and all of the above?
Venerable Choki, are you there? Would you like to say, if you are, would you like to say anything about loving kindness, which is a sort of a Theravadic practice, but maybe from a...
Oh, believe me, it's also a Vajrayana, Mahayana practice, big time. don't exclude us, right?
No way, but I just wasn't quite sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bridget. I was so intrigued to hear about my year of living kindly. What's the actual title to my kindness, loving kindness to myself? And it was wonderful when you actually said, well, it wasn't all like that, that, going through anxiety and so forth, because I think that is actually an act of loving kindness, like you said in your last reading there, about acceptance and self-acceptance, exactly what the Buddha said, that if we can't, nurture our own positive qualities, if we can't feel that towards ourselves, and that's the sad thing I find in our culture. I'm not sure if it's East-West anymore, but the global culture, shall we say, of, I've heard many people say I can have, loving kindness towards others, but myself, that's difficult. Just saying, hang on a minute. If you can't have it towards yourself, you can't genuinely have it towards others. So you get what they're saying, but I think that's what, when people talk about compassion fatigue, it's not compassion, it's empathy. And that, when you mentioned about widening that circle of our capability, starting with ourselves, that's very much like one of the books from the Dalai Lama, which you may be well aware of, widening the circle of love and being able to, the capacity to grow in that, as I guess we all know, because it is in our nature. We can't help but help, that's how we're built. So, it's not a question. It's a little bit of a rave.
Thank you.
But I was very reassured that you didn't feel like that you had loving kindness towards yourself every day, because every day, every part of the day is a new moment and stuff happens.
Yeah. Bridget?
Yeah, no, beautiful. This is true. And it's an ongoing thing, and it's a beautiful thing that we can do. And it's sort of like, it just feels to me like the more it evolves, the better it is. And the last retreat I did, which was before COVID, was with a lovely teacher who came from America called Alexis Santos. And he is from, his core teacher, and he was a monk in Burma, is Sayadaw, I can't pronounce it properly, Sayadaw Tejaniya. And so the way I'm practicing at the moment ties in with all of this, which is the way he teaches. And of course, there are many, many Buddhist teachers teaching many, many different things, and different, Zen is different to Tibetan and all of the above. And most of us probably at this age have tried different things, and we're getting different feeds from different things. They mightn't all be Buddhist. They might be from other sources, psychology or Sufi, or I don't know what, but, indigenous wisdoms. The thing that Tejaniya teachers, which is, I think, very good for Westerners, and he was like this when Alexis went there, because Alexis was a type A achiever, been to med school, blah, 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 really trying to go for it and get it right and get concentration, da, da, da. It was basically relax. That was the first instruction, relax. And then you're not trying to change any of the above. You're not trying to focus. You're not trying to concentrate. You're not trying to get rid of unpleasant feelings. You're not trying to you're just watching the mind. And so I actually watched Joseph Goldstein last night. There's a great movie on Tricycle about how they started IMS. And he says his first teacher, I think it was Menindraji, said, you want to know the mind, sit down and watch the mind. So that the thing about being expansive to all is it doesn't really matter whether you've got a sore knee or a horrible attitude to your neighbour. You will have greed, hatred and ignorance, as we say in Zen. Greed, hatred and ignorance will rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. And sometimes they don't want to be abandoned. You don't like your neighbour, and you still don't like your neighbour. Or this person is very challenging to you and it's triggering or whatever. But how is the mind? that's the bit about put your arms around it kindly. Could the mind be steady and equanimous and aware as all that stuff rises and falls? And it's just, to me, such a valuable practice to be able to work like that, to go, well, you know, some days it'll be what you'd call like, that was a good day, and some days I got my physical needs met and some days I did not. But if there's this part of the mind that can be peaceful and equanimous, you know, that's the place to try and practice for my own practice at this point in time. Like,
Brigid, I really like, you know, from reading your book, the way you bring in wisdom from so many different places. And, you know, you've obviously been inspired by many different traditions. But just going back to Prakanipalo, I remember him saying quite definitely, just stick to one path. Don't go trying this path and that path. Just stick to the path.
yeah.
I just wondered if you've got any thoughts on that.
No, it's a really a good one. And I can remember him saying that. And it was maybe not just him, but it's commonly said, don't dig, was it 10 holes a foot deep? Dig a 10-foot hole. Like, take one and do that. And I mean, to my credit, I think I have more or less done that. Like, I had 7 or 8 years as a Theravada living at Wat Buddha, then a bit more when I came here and supported the Buddhist Society. So that was my practice. And then it was time for something fresh and new for all sorts of reasons. And I became a Zen student, and I was fully that. I wasn't dibbling and dabbling around like a Zen student 1 minute and you know, something else the next minute. That was at least 10 years of solid Zen practice. And then now, as a person who's nearly to 70, just it came because here in Perth, we take the teachers we can get. Like, there's not that many places that I could go. So when the Perth Insight Society brings a teacher, I've done a lot of retreats. We have this, most of you know this, but Jhana Grove is the most amazing place because you've got your own room and a toilet. Now, how often does that happen? In a beautiful bushland place an hour and a half from Perth. So if there's a retreat there, it's such a luxurious blessing to go there. And so I practiced with various teachers there, but just sometimes you just know this is right for me now. So it's not like I have a new boyfriend every week.
Yeah.
And I think most people would say that. But people, it's interesting because in this movie about IMS, this was of interest to me. They set it up. One of the men who was talking was about the actual financial aspect of it. And to get a lot more benefits when they bought this place, they had to call themselves a church. Well, they were a church, but you had to say what your lineage was, right? And so they brought in, I think it was Uba, Kin, Goenka, and Manindra. Ajahn Chah, because Joseph had been an Ajahn Chah student, Uba Kin tradition, and Goenka. And that was what they did. And then you have to prove the lineage, and you have to only basically teach that, because then it's a church. Otherwise, it's called a religious organization or some other thing. And it was one of the guys, it was very interesting, all the financial side of how to do this. Anyway, at a certain point, Goenka pulled out. He basically, Joseph tells of Sharon coming running in with this letter and going, oh, they've still got the letter. Basically, Goenka saying, don't mix traditions. So Goenka's fairly strict on that. Like, you do Goenka, and that's what you do. And he basically said, I don't want to be a part of this three-way, to put it crudely. So I think everyone has to answer that for themselves. But I know many people, for example, Subhana, who was a Buddhist Roshi and also an insight teacher. So I think, and there are other people in the world. And for myself, at a certain point, I would have said, I have two paths. I have two paths. I'm a Zen student and I'm also an insight student. So I don't think you can be rigid, but yeah, I think you'd know for yourself, I'm just a butterfly. I'm dibbling and dabbling in there, and then it gets a bit hard and I'll dibble and dabble somewhere else. That's possibly not spiritually useful.
A little bit off topic, but before you wrote this book, you've written, I believe, 8 books for young people.
Yep. And
I just wondered if in any way and they were very successful, and I just was wondering, I haven't seen them, if there's Dharma messages in those books. for young people?
Not specifically, no. They're more, I mean, they always had happy endings and were sort of about decent people, but they had the things that teenagers are interested in, like body image and boy meets girl and how, you know, difficult parents and all the things. So I wasn't specifically channeling my Buddhism.
The Dharma.
No. Yeah. It was more like I found a thing that meant I didn't have to do a 9-to-5 job, and I kept at it. And it tied in with teaching creative writing. So it wasn't specifically Buddhism. And then, not that anyone has asked this, but if anyone says to me, oh, what are you working on now? Nothing that you could call a book, I don't think. Because for me, like, that part of my writing career was, I need an income and I need a thing to do, and this is the thing I can do. But now I don't need the money, I don't need the fame, I don't need the career, but I would need to feel I had something to say. And with a year of loving kindness to myself, it feels like that's what I wanted to say. At this point in time, nothing particular to say. I mean, ask me again in 5 years, I might have written another book, but like, yeah, for me, life at the moment is grandparenting and volunteering and relaxing and exercising and just having a life, having a peaceful life. And Dharma, I listen to Dharma. I feel I've worked hard all my life. If this isn't the time when I can have a spiritual life and put my effort into what interests me the most, well, you know, I haven't got that much time left. Even if I get to be 100 like my grandmother, I've had 3/4 of myself. Yeah.
And just basically, would you recommend other people take that as a project, you know, a year of loving kindness, and write some of what experiences they've had and results they've had along the way? Would you recommend that?
Well, it is just also preluding. My friend Kathy has a question, so we'll answer your one first.
Okay.
The sort of Stephen Levine, he had it first. He ran a course, apparently, like a year of loving kindness to yourself, and it was like a proper, let's do it together as a group and da-da-da. So what I guess I believe is, this is going to sound a bit weird, but if you were told you only had 3 months to live, what would you do? And people will come up with different answers for that. I mean, I personally would start eating cheesecake for breakfast. I'd stop being so sensible. But yes, because it's a really good koan, right? We don't know how long we've got. So we should be living. Like, if you were told you're going to die tomorrow, what would you do today? Who would you call? Who would you apologize to? What would you, who would you give a lovely Buddha statue to? So I believe we should live like this. And if it feels like an artificial device, like I'm going to practice loving kindness for a year, to me, well, then definitely not. But it's not a bad brief.
Yeah, exactly. Was it Kathy who had a question? If you just unmute yourself, Kathy.
Of course, thank you. It's not actually a question, it's a comment. I have read all of Brigid's books, and she's selling herself a little bit short. Her fiction for young adults had Dharma in the way she wrote of the characters, the evolution of their character, the way they dealt with situations, particularly Guitar Highway Rose, my favourite, that has a piece on death. And I just wanted to say that her Dharma had been shining for many decades.
Oh, that is so good to hear. I wasn't being falsely modest. I just might have forgotten that. So I thank you. That is good to know.
What about Judith? Judith also was a student of both Prakani Palo and Ayakima. Would you like to say anything on loving kindness, Judith? And you have to unmute. You have to unmute, or I can do it for you. There we are. Yeah. We still can't hear you. Sorry, Judith. I don't know what's happened. Try again. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's very strange. Anyhow, sorry, Judith. Anyone else? Venerable Jouet has come again.
He's gone to dinner.
Oh, she's gone. You read that.
Time for some loving kindness to myself, as communal dinner will be served. Metta to everyone.
Yeah.
I'll just say thanks very much, Brigid, even though I haven't read your book, but everything that you have said, I think is very relevant and very pertinent, you know, in today's world. And I think probably COVID was probably instrumental in bringing loving kindness, the thoughts of loving kindness to everybody else, because it gave us time to all stop and look and certainly practice. And so I guess that you kind of struck it lucky, because it's it was so relevant, you know, that you know, and it's kind of gone mainstream now, hasn't it? You know, all this, you know, loving kindness, you know, as Buddhists for many, many years. I mean, it's something that we've always been aware of, but we've all, you know, people have thought, oh, well, she's a Buddhist, yeah, you know, she just gets a bit, you know, out there. But you know, I think it's more mainstream now, and I think, you know, and you've been very practical the way, and I've loved your examples too. So thanks very much. It's been great.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, good. Yeah, the trajectory of a book is very mysterious, because I thought that the prior book, my first book for adults, was really a cracker, but it didn't do that well. And then this one I had, because of that, no hopes whatsoever. It's like, oh, well. But this one, like, I got some really nice surprises. It was Apple Book of the Month. And I think that Apple apparently get like 30,000 titles from all around the world that they can put on. It's like a Kindle that they can put on the Apple phone. And mine got chosen as best. Fremantle Press could not believe that this had happened. And it was best book of the year so far. And like, who knew? And then recently, which is a nice surprise, they said, oh, your book has sold in Taiwan and it will be translated into Chinese. You know, okay.
Oh, that's just a small market there, Brigid.
Yeah, right. So,
oh, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's just really nice. Like, you get some funny emails, and I got 2 from blokes, and they said, well, my wife had this book by the bed, and I think it's really, really good, and it really spoke to me. It's like, cool. That's the thing that makes it, you know, or that my son and his wife liked it, or one of my relatives in New Zealand said, this is your best ever. Like, it's just nice to know that whatever you said is, you know, of meaning to someone, and bringing them some happiness is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's not like a traditional, you know, Dharma book. It is easy to read. So I think you've done a great job there. Look, it's almost an hour's almost up. I might just pick on a few more people, see if they want to say anything. Lovely Meg is there. Do you want to say anything, Meg?
And Scylla raised her hand.
Oh, Scylla. Sorry, I missed you. Okay, I'll go to Scylla. Maybe I can. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've unmuted, so you should be.
You're right. Yeah.
Good. Well, I was going to say a few things. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about if you have anger or anxiety or whatever negative emotion, that you should hold your anger like a mother holds her baby, like her crying baby, and you know, and that's really about going, understanding where it's coming from, and sort of like just sitting with it, and trying to see what the causes are, and so that that's a way of loving kindness to ourselves, for us to look at what's the cause of my anxiety or my jealousy, or you know, whatever emotion comes up. The other one way that I have loving kindness towards myself is, I think we all have these, you know, mistakes and issues in our past that we think, why did I do that? Or why didn't I do that? You know, some of these things can keep coming back around into our mind and not be resolved. And one way I've helped myself to resolve them is to say, that person 30 years ago had the awareness that she had, and now I'm older and wiser and I can see back to that. But at that time, 30 years ago, I was doing the best that I could. And I was doing what I thought was the right thing to do. And so you have a forgiveness. You know, I think forgiveness is a big deal with ourselves, isn't it? With loving kindness. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is, if you don't have loving kindness for yourself, you won't have loving kindness for other people. You know, so to cultivate loving kindness is actually a gift for everyone around me, because the kinder I am to myself, the kinder I am to everybody around me. So it's, in that way, it's definitely not selfish. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Agreeing with everything you said, obviously, but
yeah,
in the Shyla Catherine book that I was mentioning, The 5 Distractions, and it comes from, I think, 1 or maybe 2 Buddhist sutras, but you can follow it up. But that investigation is one of the things. There's various methods you can do, and about the 3rd or 4th one is to really investigate it. Like, what's all this about? What would be the causes and conditions for my jealousy or da-da-da? And it's quite good, because sometimes we can't make it go away. We can't ignore it. We can't tell ourselves it's not useful. We can't grit our teeth and bear it. But we can sometimes go, I'm actually going to have a bit of a look at this. And so this comes into that book, one of the 5 ways of dealing with sort of unwholesome. And not many people would ever do that. You might think, oh, that's a bit self-indulgent, but can be useful if something's really sticky. You go, what is this actually about? And then really use your brain to have a bit of a look at it and see the causes and conditions. Yeah. And I agree with you that sometimes forgiving yourself for things that you regret, that's all you can do. You can go, well, that was shabby. You know, it was shabby, but it was the causes and conditions led me to that, and I'm going to try and let it go now.
Thanks, Cilla, and thanks, Brigid. I'm going to pick on one more person. She may be reluctant to speak, but I know Sonja has just completed a weekend on trauma, and I just wonder, you know, the relation between dealing with trauma and loving kindness. Sonja, can you say anything? I'm not sure she will. Are you there, Sonja? No, I don't think.
Yes, I am here, but would you mind if I declined at the moment?
Okay, no, it's probably a bit raw, so
it's yeah. Okay, thanks, Helen.
No, that's okay.
But I would like to thank Brigid. It was a wonderful book, and I truly enjoyed it. It was so relatable, because at the time that I was reading it, I was doing much the same thing myself, and I really sort of felt too that a lot of us are going through the same thing, and that it's just not unusual. And yes, so I just found it very, very helpful. So, and I truly congratulate you, because I think from my side, I felt it was such a courageous book to write, because you were so open and you were so honest, and you didn't hold back. And so, yes, I felt it was a truly courageous thing to do. So thank you very much. And I really admire that you did that. So thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. That is so kind of you to say, and I'm very happy to hear that. Just two points. One is something Luna's phone just said. It's about blaming ourselves or for past things. She's just said, sometimes I can find I'm not blameworthy, when I realised my intention has not been to cause harm. So that's quite a good way to look at certain things, where you go, yeah, it was clumsy and things went badly wrong, but was my intention to cause harm? And that you can ease your heart to go, no, it was not my intention to cause harm. So that's one point. And this is just, it's too big a topic now, but I was listening to a talk by Jack Cornfield. He gives a monthly talk at Spirit Rock, and someone was asking him, they often have someone at the end asking him a question, and he's a psychologist, and he sort of works with them a little bit, like a little dialogue. He's very skilled. This person has a lot of problems. I've seen them before, but so this is just like I'm throwing in a hot potato now, and then I'll go. No, about trauma. And he was basically saying, he wasn't saying there's no such thing as trauma. He's saying, of course, there is such a thing as trauma. He totally applauds the fact that it's in the public arena more now, and that there are a lot of people who are dealing with it, and psychologists and specialists and Gabriel Mate and like people where that's their thing. So he wasn't in any way denying that trauma was real, but he basically widened it up and saying the Buddha called it dukkha. So it's interesting to me, because I sometimes, because with my own issues of having perhaps anxiety and depression at various times in my life, I suddenly can really pathologize myself, like maybe I'm a post-traumatic stress person, and maybe, and you go, like, it's more useful to me because I'll read something about trauma, and I'll read something about depression, and I'll read something about anxiety, and I will learn much. But to sort of put myself or someone else in that box, I don't feel necessarily always helpful.
Look, I think we might wrap up fairly soon, unless anyone would like to say. No more questions? Hands up? Not, was that a hands up, Choki? No. So Brigid, over to you for perhaps some final words.
Okay, well, I just read a little message here from Leslie, and she's saying she remembers me from the what. So, hi. I was actually looking at Judith as well, because you said, because Helen the other day said that she was at the what about when I was, but we look a little older now.
Yeah, true.
Oh, yeah, that could have been. Yeah. So, no, just thank you very, very much for having me. And
Judith, can we hear you now?
Is it working?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. I don't know why we couldn't hear you before, but if you'd like to say something.
I went in and I clicked on a few random spots, so I don't know why it's working. Anyway, Brigid, thank you so much for your very, very wonderful talk. And I haven't read the book, but I certainly will do so and get a copy. A lot of things you said resonated with me. I actually listened to that Jack Cornfield talk the other night, and when he mentioned about trauma. And I thought, oh, at last, somebody's, taking it out of that arena of, everybody's traumatized. Trauma is a very strong word to use. And I thought that his definition of suffering was much more appropriate and useful to work with.
Oh,
so
good.
I really appreciated your saying that. Loving kindness, well, as you've alluded to, Kima was a great teacher of loving kindness. And I remember I was a retreat organizer once, and I didn't realize that when you're a retreat organizer, you don't get much of a retreat yourself. Anyway, this was my first experience. So I went to her and I said, look, I can't, whenever I sit, there's all these lists of things to do and people and things. I'm not meditating at all. She said, Judith, just practice loving kindness. Every time you pass somebody, just send them loving kindness. Send loving kindness. Send loving kindness. And it became so easy. And I stopped trying to get concentration. I just did loving kindness whenever I could. It was much improved anyway. So thank you for your thoughts on all of that, and I look forward to reading the book.
Good, and it should be in the library. It should be in the library. You don't have to buy it. You can get it from the library.
Is it? Oh,
it should be. Should be. Yeah.
I'll buy it.
Okay, well, look, thank you, Brigid. We really appreciate your time. I sense that you were a little bit reluctant to do this initially, and it's really been very worthwhile to hear your thoughts, and there's a lot of depth there. So very big thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom and what you've learnt through doing that year of